Hello everyone, and I hope you're fine. So my name is Mbuto, and this is a lecture on learning how to learn. I'm going to take you through this lecture, and the objective of this lecture is to give you some skills to become a better learner, a better student, and a better scholar. So that's the unit, learning to learn, and we are going to develop our study skills through the help of this unit. So, what does it take to be a good student? According to Thomas Learn is Good in 1997, these guys say that to be a good student, um, it's actually a long journey and is a process of changing habits and working styles together with the ways of thinking. And that is what it takes to become a good student. So we are students, yes, but we now have to try to become good students. And for us to become good students, then it means we have to change the way we think, we have to change the way we work, we have to change the way we are doing certain things to now be able to do things that are in line with being a good student or being a good scholar. So there are some questions here I want you to look at and to try to think about for some few seconds. And then I want you to try and answer them yourself. And the first question is, are you sure or unsure how well you will cope with serious studying? Because of course, you've joined a profession now and there's going to be serious study. So are you sure or unsure about how you're going to cope with this serious study? The second question is, do you have difficulties concentrating when reading? So you try to reflect what you've been doing in the past when reading. Do you experience some difficulties in terms of concentrating? Then do you sometimes wonder when to write and when to write, not to write notes? Have you ever copied a whole page or pages of a book in the name of making notes? So if the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you're in the right class. You deserve to be in this class. Because this class is all about helping you to become a better student, helping you to be able to cope with serious study, helping you to be able to concentrate while reading, and to help you even on how to write notes, when to write notes, how do you make good notes, and not just copy pasting whatever you are reading. So to get started, in any endeavor or anything that you're doing, usually the hardest step, for example, let's talk about a journey. The hardest step in any journey is to take the first step. And similarly, starting a course is the hardest thing. For example, I know maybe it took a lot of effort for you to decide to come to North Coast, for example. It took a lot of effort for you to decide to do the course that you've decided to do now. But after you make the first step, usually going forward is a bit easier, and you can think about why is that the case? Why is it the case that the first step is usually the most difficult? And maybe you already forming the answers in your mind. Of course, with the first step, you really have got to make a decision if you want to commit yourself to that particular endeavor. You have to think about what is needed for that particular endeavor. Do you have what is required? Are you ready to make the sacrifices that you will be expected to make in that particular endeavor? And this is what makes the first step to be rather difficult, the preparation. Because here you've not started the journey, but the preparations for the journey are rather also quite intense. And this is what makes the first step in any journey or any endeavor to be quite difficult. So even in your course of study, you've already taken the most difficult step, and now what is remaining is to really go ahead and take the other steps. Or since still we are going into more serious and intense study, then it means we also still need to prepare properly. Maybe some of us did not prepare properly when we were taking the first step, but now here we are. We've already taken the first step, but we need to really better ourselves so that we can be able to proceed in this journey and complete. So we are talking about studying, and we need to understand what we mean by studying. And studying is an academic engagement to acquire new knowledge and insight. You can acquire intuition or awareness, acumen, or discernment. So when somebody is studying, what it means is that that person is doing an engagement to acquire knowledge or insight. So things that you didn't know, now you get to know them. Things that you are not aware of, then you now get to be aware of. Intuition, that is deep understanding of things, and the discernment, you are able now to kind of almost distinguish things that to you maybe they were just ordinary, but now you get to understand them in depth. And that is what studying is. And you can do this, you can get this information from text. You can do it by watching audio-visual material. You can do it by looking at diagrams, things like that. So studying is both a mental and a physical activity. It's mental in the sense that it requires one to be in the right state of mind, because you have to put in information, you've got to perceive that information. For example, you have to read it, you have to watch it, you have to look at diagrams, and then you have to process this information. And you try to make meaning out of this information. And that is why studying is a mental activity. And it's a physical activity also because it requires a lot of movement, postures. Because, for example, the position you use to study, you want to be seated in a comfortable position so that you are able to study. You require to make some movement, and all this then will mean that you require to be physically also fit for you to study effectively. So that's why we are saying it's both a physical and a mental activity. So if that is the case, therefore, it means we really need to prepare for study. We do not just, like a journey, you don't just wake up and say, today I'm going to Nairobi. You have to prepare for you to be able to go to Nairobi, for example, if that's the journey. So just like there are many ways to make the most journeys, there are different ways to go through your studies as well. You have to plan your study process, just like the journey, the way you plan for a journey. And then there is the preparation. What do you need for a particular journey? Do you have all the things that you'll need to have? Because you must know why you are embarking on that journey. What do you want to achieve with that journey? And do you have the necessary material and non-material things that you need for that particular journey? And it is similar with studies. Why are you studying? When are you going to study? And what then do you need to be able to study? Do you have all those things? And then the mental readiness, because we say this is both physical and um, a mental activity. So the mental readiness, before you begin to study, are you first of all ready mentally? Have you prepared? Because even in your mind, it must be clear that this is a time that I've set aside to study, and therefore you are prepared to go into serious business. You're prepared to study at that particular time. So the mental readiness is another thing. And here, when we talk about mental readiness, there is something that is called a study diary, because we are talking about, are you ready to study? Which means you must have planned. So in planning, you need to plan ahead. So you need to keep a study diary that at this particular time, I'm going to be doing this. At this particular time, I'm going to be studying this, like that. So it has to be in your schedule. If you have to be a good scholar, it has to be in your schedule that this is a time that I've set aside for me to do A, B, C, D, and it must be clear also what you are reading at that particular time. And that's why here we are saying you should keep a study diary. We are going to see an example of a study diary that you can keep. So in planning, time management is very, very key. Before you start any study journey, you need to think about some few things about how you're going to manage your time. In particular, how will you find time? So you need to plan your week. And then how are you going to use time effectively? So how do you find time? Here you can look at what things must I do in this particular week, and then when am I going to do these things, so that now I set aside good time for my studies. Then how to define the tasks for yourself. So what exactly do you want to learn, and you allocate time uh, for that particular thing. And then you also need to have ways of monitoring your progress. So the question is, how am I going to know that I am on the right track, that I am accomplishing my tasks? So you need to think about that. You need to have a way to be able to monitor your progress. Then you need to set up a place to study. You don't just go and study anywhere. So you need to have a place that you've set aside, and this is where I am going to study at this time on this day, and that place must have the things that you need to study. For example, you need to have a good chair to be able to sit comfortably and study. There must be good lighting. You need to have, for example, a table and the other resources that you need. So you need to set up a place for study so that now when you're there, you don't waste time looking for these things again. And then the equipment, like I told you, chairs, tables, books, and other resources that you may need. And then you need to be clear, when are you going to explore, for example, the library, planning for study, and we talked about how to prepare and how to plan, and especially the physical things that you would need, and when would you want to explore, for example, the library, or when would you want to consult some seniors. So all of this has to be in your plan. It doesn't come just because you want to do it at that time, but you need to have planned for it so that it is effective. So we are going to continue now and see. So I talked about a study diary, and this is an example of a study diary, and you can see the way it's structured. So you are going to have your days here, up here, and then you're going to have the day split into different sessions. For example, morning, mid-morning, afternoon, and the evening. So this is just an example, but you can put one that really suits you. So for example, you know, on Monday in the morning, I'm going to have a lecture, and in the mid-morning, we're going to have group work, and then in the afternoon, I'm going to do my own personal research, and in the evening, I'm going to have another session of group work. On Tuesday, what things am I going to be doing at that time? So this helps you to keep track of time, and also to really purposefully find time for your study. So it would be nice that each one of you, if you want to really be good, to be really a good student, and to be able to find time and to use time for you very well or efficiently for your studies, then it is imperative that you need to keep a study diary for yourself. Okay, so we go on. Now, I'm going to introduce to you some few reading strategies, and as you read, for example, if it is text that you're reading or audiovisual material that you're watching, for the purpose of studying, then you're going to get, there is a lot of information that is out there. So we said studying is purposeful, sorry. So you must be able to understand what is it that I'm really looking for. And you're going to find that when you study, you're going to get a lot of information. For example, um, and this information is going to be different. There's information that is a must for you to learn, and there's information that is useful for you to learn, and there's information that is simply nice for you to learn. So what does all this mean? And you can see whatever you must learn, it forms the core. It should be at the center. So whatever you must learn, this is information that is critical for your study. You cannot perform, or you're not going to be able to perform your duties, or you're not going to be able to practice your profession if you do not learn this. So this is the core of your study. And then useful to learn, this is information that is going to help you that you build on the core, that is not very necessary that you have it, but if you have it, it makes you a better person. It is going to help you to practice whatever you want to practice in a more efficient way. And then the nice to learn, this is general information that you can have just for your own betterment, but it is not necessary, or you are not necessarily going to apply it in your profession. So usually this information is the one that sounds nice and easy usually, and most people kind of usually get stuck reading just nice information. But we should purposefully try to find out what we must learn, so that, because that forms the core of your profession. So how do you know which information is a must for you to learn, which information is good for you to learn or useful, and which information is just nice to learn? So um, if you look at information that is a must learn, this is information that is, or these are the learning objectives as outlined in the curriculum. It is what is expected of you as a student in that course of study. And then the nice to learn, this is related to general objectives. Sorry, the second one is supposed to be useful to learn. It is related to the general objectives. So it doesn't form the core, but if you have it, then it's going to make you a better person. Then the nice to learn, this is contained in the broad objectives. So this is information that now when you look broadly, then it's there, but it's not a must for you to be able to learn that particular part. So now reading strategies. So reading is an activity, and there's reading and there is studying. So when you're studying, for example, when you're studying text, then you're going to read. You're going to read that text. So then you have to employ certain strategies for you to be able to get what you're supposed to get. Because reading can be different depending on what you're reading and why you're reading. So if you're reading purposefully to get information, especially scientific information in this course of study, then there are certain strategies that you must be able to employ for you to get what you must get. So before you go into the details of anything that you want to read, you need to understand some few things. For example, you need to look at the authorship of the information. Who is writing this information? Who is the author? Which year was it published? These are important things because you might find, for example, you resonate very well with certain authors. There are certain authors that you get a book and you find the style in which they write, then it is easy for you to understand. Then that is an author that you will look for example, or you can recommend. Or for example, you have another unit of study, then you can remember that, oh, this person who writes quite well in an easy way for me to understand. The year the work you're reading was published. This is also important in that you need to look for more recent information. For example, if you look at work that was written in 1960, then there is a big probability that it might be outdated and maybe new things have come up and it is no longer very valid. Then you need to read the foreword and the preface. This gives you an idea of why the writer is writing that particular information and to who the writer is writing. So then if that describes you, then that is the right material for you to read. So this helps you to save time to decide, is this material that I want to read, or I need to find another material. Then you also need to do some mapping of the subject or the topic or the theme. So you need to break down the topic or the theme until that is into subtopics or subthemes or the subunits to be able to understand. And depending on the nature of the topic and the purpose for which you are reading, you can generate your own learning objectives. So if you are doing a topic like, for example, let's say you want to understand learning theories, then you need to break that into subtopics or subthemes, and then that should help you now to generate your own objectives. So what do I want to gain by the end of studying this particular thing? So you need to have those ones set so that now you can be able to continue. Still, in reading strategies, you need, like I said, you need to develop your own objectives, and as well, you need to develop your own interest. So you must have your own interest, why you are reading that particular work. And I can give you some few suggestions here. For example, you need to create your own questions that you want to answer through that particular reading. For example, you can also try to figure out why other people have found interest in that particular topic, and then you need to connect the subject to your own experience. And this, guys, is very important because the information that you learn becomes or will resonate very well if you connect that information to your own experience. If you, for example, you've learned about, let's say, group dynamics, and you've seen the different stages that are there in group dynamics, and then you try to connect that to what you've gone through, for example, in the past when you joined a certain group, and then you can understand that, oh, okay, so at this particular point we had a lot of difficulties. Kumbe, it is because we were storming. So when you relate this information to your own experience like that, then learning becomes meaningful. So I want to give you this example, and maybe you might want to pause this video and try to generate your own objectives or learning goals for these particular topics. For example, if you're learning about the Second World War, then what objectives would you come up with for your own study? You want to understand the Second World War, or a recent outbreak of cholera in Sierra Leone, or even, for example, the outbreak of COVID-19 in Kenya. So a topic like that, then you would want, there are things that you would want to know yourself. So let me just use the Second World War as an example. For example, if I want to learn about the Second World War, then there are things that I will ask myself, what exactly do I want to learn about the Second World War? And for me, there are things that would come up like, what led to the Second World War? What triggered it? Who participated? Where did it occur? These are questions that I would want to answer as I read about the Second World War. What were the effects? How did it end? So now, if I have these learning objectives, then my study becomes purposeful because as I study, I want to find out answers to these particular questions. And that makes learning very purposeful and very meaningful. So steps towards purposeful reading, you need to flip through the topic to get an idea on how the author has organized their work. So skim through, you kind of read just a little bit here and there to just understand how is this information organized. And then you can read through the topic introduction to get a gist of the topic. So if you go through the introduction, then you can be able to know what exactly is this author going to talk about. And then as you read, you need to go paragraph by paragraph, and you need to stop and reflect, because each paragraph, especially in scientific writing, each paragraph is going to carry a certain complete idea, and you need to sum that one up before you go to the next. Because if you go to the next and you've not understood the previous one, then you're going to have trouble, because these ideas are usually linked like that. And then you need to look for answers to your own questions. So the rest we are going to discuss in the next part of the video, where we'll be looking at, I'll come back to this particular slide where we are talking about especially how to read, and then I'll proceed from there. So we go on, and as you read, you also need to make sense of what you're reading. So to be able to do that, you need to ask yourself some few questions. For example, is whatever you are reading resonating well with whatever you already know? Because we always have some prior knowledge about a certain, about any topic that we are trying to read about. And as you read, then you need to find out, is whatever I am reading making sense, or is it resonating with whatever I already know. For example, maybe you already know from high school that a heart has got 4 chambers. Then now you are reading about the heart. Then is whatever you are reading correlating with whatever you already know? So if the answer is yes, then you need also to ask yourself, does it add value to what I already know? And if the answer is no here, then you do not need to spend a lot of time reading that text because it doesn't add value anyway. And if the answer is yes, then you need to ask yourself, or you read now here, not only to get more information, but to get what is the common thread and to get the thesis here. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining about what a thesis is. So as you're reading, okay, I have some few terminologies here which I'm going to spend some bit of time to explain, and as you read, you're going to get some things coming out like the thesis, hypothesis, theory, proposition, idea, opinion, or notion. So when we look at a thesis, for example, a thesis is the main reason why the writer is writing. So what are they trying to explain in that particular text? That is the thesis. And the explanations that they are trying to give, those are the hypotheses. And these hypotheses together, they form a theory. So of course, there are going to be propositions, whatever the writer is trying to put forward as the information that he believes is true according to him. And you need to differentiate these from ideas and from opinions. And opinions is a personal feeling and it may be correct or incorrect, and as well notions. So, like I said, the thesis, this is the foundation. It is the main reason why the writer is writing. And in scientific text, you will find writers will just write either to prove an existing theory or to create a theory. So, unlike in fictional writing, you just create a story and put in other information that you want to put in, like a plot or a scheme or a conspiracy. Then you go on writing like that, so that as the person reads, they just get a mental picture of what you're trying to tell them. But in scientific writing, you're writing either to prove an existing theory or you are creating another theory. And to be able to do this, scientific writers use two kinds of reasoning that are almost opposite. And these are either inductive thinking or deductive thinking. Inductive, from the word inductive, it comes from the word induce. And to induce is to bring forth something that was not there in the first place. So you are trying to create a theory in this case. And deductive, to deduce, is kind of providing evidence. So you are trying to generate or to prove that something is actually true. So I have a schematic diagram here, for example, of inductive thinking, and this is the point where you are trying to come up with a theory. The theory here is going to be a conclusion, and this the writer is going to be putting forth a number of observations and looking at these observations to generate what is common in all these observations. And by if you get what is common in all these observations, then you can come up with a conclusion, and this conclusion becomes a theory. And on the other hand, when you talk about deductive thinking, then you're looking for evidences. There is a theory here, and then you're looking for evidences, and you try to put this theory in a certain circumstance that you find, yes, it works. You're putting it in another circumstance and you see, yes, it works. And yet in another one and you see, yes, it works, then you prove that theory to be true. So writers are going to be using these ways of thinking to write. So it is important for you to understand how the writer is writing. And in conclusion, you need to understand the pattern that the writer is using to write. If you do not understand the pattern, then you're going to have trouble understanding um, the text. Because if a writer is writing to prove a certain theory, then you need to be able to understand that here this writer is using a deductive thinking, and then you get what are the evidences that, okay, what is the theory in the first place, and what evidences is the writer trying to bring forth to prove that this is actually true. And if the writer is using an inductive thinking, then whatever you are reading, you see that, okay, these are the observations that the writer is putting forth. And at the end, you need to be able to get, after the writer bringing all these observations, then what is the writer's conclusion? In that way, you are able to understand the text even in a better way. So, in other words, you need to understand where is the writer coming from and where is the writer leading to. And always is good as you read and make your notes, you need to keep your references. So this lecture, my references are written here, and I hope this lecture was meaningful to you, and it's going to help you as you improve your study skills. Thank you, and I just wish you a nice academic journey as you pursue to become a better student and a better scholar, and all the best in learning to learn. And thank you.